It's official. Donald Trump has been elected president of the United States.
Donald Trump's first presidency gave Washington a playbook of hardline tactics for preventing China from overtaking the U.S. as the world's dominant economic and technological power.
China is currently engaged in a race against time as a result of Trump's return to office. The first term of President Trump was marked by a hardline approach to China, which included the implementation of punitive tariffs and a variety of trade policies with the intention of containing the country's economic and technological advancements. Now that he is beginning his second term as president, it is anticipated that he will continue to pursue this strategy, which will present Beijing with a significant challenge.
To me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff.
Trump is focused on raising tariffs to prevent China from shipping many of their goods into the United States that perhaps are subsidized by the government.
And his campaign for re-election left no doubt that his ambition for American supremacy was still his North Star.
We will hire American, buy American, build American, grow American, and show the whole world that the American dream is back.
But after 4 years out of the Oval Office, Trump is returning to face an emboldened, savvier China, and one the U.S. may already be losing its battle to contain. Tackling that is likely to be one of Trump's primary plot lines in the sequel to his first 4-year showdown with China.
Trump's tariff threats and China's exports, respectively. The promise made by Trump during his campaign to impose tariffs on Chinese imports that are higher than 60% is one of the most significant concerns for China. The world's second largest economy, which is already struggling with high youth unemployment, a prolonged property market slump, and mounting government debt, would suffer a devastating blow if such a move were to be implemented.
In point of fact, a recent study conducted by UBS suggests that a duty of 60% on Chinese goods could reduce China's economic growth by as much as 2.5 percentage points, which is approximately half of what is anticipated for China's economy. The economy of the country, which is driven by exports, has been an essential growth engine, and any disruption to this engine could have far-reaching consequences. Consequently, it should come as no surprise that Chinese factories have been making a mad dash to load up their exports in preparation for the possibility of incurring tariffs. The month of October 2024 witnessed China's exports grow at the fastest pace in more than 2 years, with a year-on-year increase of 12.7% and performance that exceeded expectations. This surge was driven by factories that were rushing to ship their products to major markets such as the United States and the European Union, before the possibility of a trade war on two fronts became something that actually happened. An explanation of the situation was provided by Xu Tianxin, a senior economist working for the Economist Intelligence Unit. We should be prepared for a significant amount of front-loading going into the fourth quarter before the pressure begins to manifest itself in the year 2025. Mostly, I believe it is due to Trump's actions. The danger is quickly becoming more tangible.
In the past month, China's exports to the United States increased by an annual 8.1%, while the country's exports to Europe increased by 12.7% over the same time period. According to Zichun Huang, an economist at Capital Economics who specializes in China, we anticipate that shipments will continue to be robust in the months to come. Until the second half of the following year, it is possible that any potential drag caused by Trump's tariffs will not materialize. She went on to say that the return of Trump could provide a temporary boost to Chinese exports, as it would encourage importers from the United States to increase their purchases in order to get ahead of the tariffs. On the other hand, the exponential growth in exports is not without its difficulties. There was a decrease in global demand, according to trade data from South Korea and Taiwan. Additionally, German manufacturers have reported that they are having difficulty finding buyers overseas. As a result of this, analysts have come to the conclusion that Chinese manufacturers are lowering their prices in order to get rid of their stock, particularly in light of the fact that sales in important markets like Europe are slowing down. I believe it is safe to say that it is more of an inventory shift if the PMI new export sub-index has been going down and the export figure has been going up, as observed by Dan Wang, a Chinese economist who is based in Shanghai. In September, there was a decrease in the number of disruptions that were caused by factors related to the weather,
which allowed exporters to send out orders that had been delayed. During the first term of President Trump's presidency, his administration enacted policies that regulate the export of high-tech goods from the United States and its allies to China. This included restricting China's access to the most cutting-edge semiconductors and prohibiting the sale of components to Chinese technology giants such as Huawei. Nevertheless, these actions have resulted in a consequence that was not intended. They have compelled China to become more self-sufficient and extensively invest in its own domestic research and development capabilities, as well as scientific capabilities. A significant amount of effort has been put forth by the nation in the pursuit of patents and the development of vital industries, such as artificial intelligence and space technology. Despite the fact that China may still be behind the United States in certain areas, particularly when it comes to the most cutting-edge semiconductors, the data demonstrates that the country has made significant strides in a variety of high-tech fields. An analysis that was conducted recently on a smartphone that was manufactured in China, known as the Mate 60, revealed that the embedded semiconductor was significantly more powerful than anyone had anticipated. This finding suggests that China may only be 4 to 5 years behind the United States, rather than the 8 to 10 years that was previously estimated.
When President Xi Jinping makes something a priority in China, he can point to banks to provide cheap financing. He can point to state-owned enterprises to throw their full weight behind backing that certain sector or industry.
In the event that President Xi Jinping decides to concentrate on a particular matter in China, he has the ability to direct banks to provide low-cost financing. In order to provide support for a particular industry or sector, he can point to state-owned enterprises that are willing to put their full weight behind it.
For instance, backers of companies like Shanghai Microelectronics Equipment considered China's best bet for competing with ASML's advanced lithography machines.
At this point, I think everybody believes that they're many years away from being able to match ASML at the pinnacle of the industry, but they're pouring billions and billions of dollars into this effort, and they're very determined to be able to close the gap as much as they possibly can.
Evidence that China's semiconductor ecosystem was expanding emerged in 2023 when Huawei released the Mate 60, or more precisely, when Bloomberg News commissioned a research firm to take one apart.
Inside that phone was a semiconductor that was much more powerful than anybody thought China could make on its own.
It suggested instead of being 8 or 10 years behind the US, actually China was 4 to 5 years behind the US. But the cross-application is what really worries DC, that if we can do this with a consumer product like a phone, it's just as easy to do this with much more sensitive technology that's used for military applications. In other areas, China really has charged ahead to take a lead.
Take a look at this chart. You can see China's market share of many high-tech exports growing, particularly EVs, despite US tariffs and restrictions on access to technology.
Ultimately, there is this idea that trade always gets through. And that's sort of what we see when we think about the EV industry in China.
The ban that President Trump imposed in 2018 on the sale of components to the Chinese telecommunications company ZTE was the impetus for this shift, according to Winston Ma, a former managing director for the China Investment Corporation, CIC, which is China's sovereign wealth fund. From a Chinese point of view, that was a very frightening thing. They decided to start getting ready. He continued by saying that it was the beginning of that kind of defensive thinking. Soon after that, Chinese President Xi Jinping urged the country to increase its level of self-reliance in the fields of science and technology. He also pushed China to develop important industries such as artificial intelligence and space. Because of this, China has gone from having only 4 government procurement projects worth more than $1.4 million 8 years ago, when it was replacing foreign hardware and software with domestic alternatives, to having 169 projects of this kind this year. Chip makers are definitely feeling the tightening, despite the progress that has been made. According to Winston Ma, these Chinese companies are unable to supply their products to customers all over the world and do not have access to the most recent chips. He anticipates a significant expansion of the entity list that restricts exports to those on it, according to Nazak Nikoktar, a former official in the Commerce Department who served under Trump.
Nikoktar anticipates that the president-elect will be much more aggressive about export control policies towards China. Ex-CIC executive Ma issued a warning that the restrictions will continue to have an effect for a considerable amount of time as the United States expands the sanctions regime to include suppliers from other countries. He went on to say that the coming years are going to be the most crucial for this competition between the United States and China in the field of technology. At the same time that President Trump is getting ready to begin his second term in office, he has made it abundantly clear that he will maintain his tough stance on China. Both his rhetoric and his policies are likely to target specific industries, such as electric vehicles, in addition to Chinese imports when they are implemented. In the past, Trump has voiced his disapproval of the CHIPS and Science Act, which was enacted by the Biden administration and allocated $53 billion to increase the production of semiconductors in the United States. In addition to this, he has asserted that Taiwan stole the chip industry from the United States several decades ago. The fact that this is the case suggests that the president-elect may attempt to undermine or even dismantle this initiative, which may have significant repercussions for the supply chain of semiconductors around the world. Furthermore, Trump has voiced his concerns regarding the potential security risks that could be posed by electric vehicles manufactured in China, as well as the data that these vehicles could collect on American consumers. He may try to fulfill a campaign pledge to protect American automobile manufacturers by imposing even higher tariffs on Chinese electric vehicle imports during his second term in office. A number of different actions have been taken by Chinese businesses in an effort to circumvent tariffs imposed by the United States. One of these actions is moving production and operations to Mexico. Container traffic from China to Mexico has increased significantly over the past few years, according to data that is tracked by freight analytics companies. Jordan DeWart, the president of Redwood Mexico, a company that specializes in cross-border logistics, provided an explanation of the strategy.
VesselBot, which also tracks container flows, shows the 3-month period from April to June recorded the highest volumes of Mexico exports to the U.S. this year. The North American Free Trade Agreement, implemented in 1994, eliminated most tariffs between the three countries. The United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA, which replaced NAFTA, went into effect 4 years ago. The agreement is up for renewal in 2026, and a focal point of those talks is expected to be trade with China.
The amount of Chinese direct investment in Mexico in 2023 was estimated to be $3.7 billion, which is a significant increase from the amount invested in Mexico in every previous decade. A good example of this is the Hofusan Industrial Park, which is located approximately 25 miles north of Monterrey, Mexico. This park is currently home to at least 30 Chinese companies, including 9 Chinese automobile manufacturers, such as BYD and Chery, which have established operations there over the course of the past 3 years.
The Hofusan Industrial Park, 25 miles north of Monterrey, Mexico, is one example of that investment and is now home to at least 30 Chinese firms. In the past 3 years, 9 Chinese car companies, including BYD and Chery, have set up operations in Mexico. What are you moving within Mexico? Is it more components to manufacturing plants?
I think Chinese companies, when they established themselves in Mexico, they were bringing finished goods in. Now they've moved on to raw materials, component parts.
What we're trying to do is bring stuff from all over the world to Mexico, manufacture here, and send it again abroad.
As long as the products undergo significant transformation, this strategy enables Chinese manufacturers to avoid tariffs by exchanging a label that reads "Made in China" for one that reads "Made in Mexico." Nevertheless, this pattern has not been overlooked by anyone. In Ramos, an officer with the United States Customs and Border Protection gave an explanation that they conduct a thorough inspection of the origin of goods, looking at the location where the product was manufactured and the point of manufacture that was the final point of production. The country of origin will be determined based on this factor. What are your thoughts on this situation? Let us know in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.